Welcome to the Hyper Guy Motivational Podcast. Thank you for being here today. Happy holidays and happy New Year's to everybody. I have a wonderful guest here today, but I've been trying to get him on for a while. He's just a very, very difficult person to get a hold of because he is so busy and he's doing a lot of amazing things. I have Professor Frank Zerunyan from the USC Soul School. Oh, well, sorry about this. The USC Public Policy School. He is a professor of governance. He's a director of executive education. He has been a multiple term mayor in the city of Rolling Hills, correct, Frank?
Rolling Hills Estates, yes.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry. You have so much going on. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start with all this. He has his JD in law from Western State College and his BA from Long Beach. And I'm going to go over the rest of your history. And I'm so sorry I flubbed it at the beginning because you just got so much. So how are you doing? And thank you so much for being here.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Martin. I really appreciate it. I always enjoy your enthusiasm, and I can understand why your listeners listen to you because you're always exciting to hear. And thank you for the invitation. I'm sorry it didn't work out a number of times, but here I am and ready to be embarrassed. So go for it.
Well, first, Frank, I want to ask you, you have a very amazing career. And like I said, we're going to go over it little by little, but where were you born and raised?
So I was born in Istanbul, Turkey. Which was actually on my mother's side, pretty much ancestral grounds going back to almost to the Byzantine Empire. On my father's side, it's more Center Anatolia or Western Armenia, as it was known several hundred years ago. And then, of course, modern day Turkey. And I left, I went to kindergarten to elementary school in Istanbul to a private Armenian school. That's where my initial formation was. And my parents did not want me to grow up in Turkey, which was a little challenging for those of us who were Armenian because we were kind of rising from the ashes of genocide. And the hatred, to a degree, even today, continues, unfortunately, in some of those countries. I wouldn't say, everyone, but certainly there is a remnants of a nationalistic, former Young Turk type mentality that, given the opportunity, would do the same thing they've done in 1915. So my parents did a great thing to send me to boarding school at age 11. I went to Paris, France, to a very good school, a very Jesuit style, Catholic fathers who happened to have been an order of Armenian fathers out of Venice, going back to 1600s, where the Doge of Venice gave them an island of San Lazzaro, where they started their mission, so to speak. And their mission was to educate Armenian children in the diaspora. And they've done that very well for years. And that's where I went to school, middle school and high school, before coming to the United States.
So, Frank, you have to tell me. There's a huge part that I'm not going to let you skip over. What was it like growing up in France? And so you said you went to Turkey when you went to France when you were 11. What was it like growing up in Turkey and then making that kind of progression to France culturally? What was that like for you?
Well, I always speak about this, actually. I've lived in 3 different cultures with a total of, at least 4 languages that I'm fluent in today, but I've learned 7 in my lifetime, and 4 of which I'm still read and write and fluent in. It was hard, Martin. It wasn't easy. 11-year-old, if you can imagine, an 11-year-old separating from his parents and going to boarding school a couple thousand miles away is not an easy thing to do. And in Europe, for the United States, perhaps a couple thousand miles, today's standards is not that bad. But don't forget, I'm talking about 1970s. I am that old indeed. I'm talking about 1970s, early 70s, when I went to Paris. Um, and at that time, that kind of distance was a world away. I used to write letters to my parents. There was no telephone. Um, so, you know, how the world has changed. What I've seen in my lifetime is absolutely astounding. I didn't have television in my home growing up. I used to listen to the soccer games on radio. Um, and we didn't have a landline until I was about 11 years old in our home in Istanbul. So I grew up with a very, very old technology, almost the technology of the Depression era in the United States, in Turkey at the time. But it was difficult to make the transition for an 11-year-old boy. I'm the only child to my parents, and to separate from my parents was hard. I remember crying when I went to the dorm room and pulling the blanket over my head and crying underneath so that my friends could not see that I was crying.
Wow.
You know, it's tough to be in a boys' boarding school because you can't show weakness.
And what was your relationship like with your parents? Did you have a good relationship with your parents?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful relationship to this day. I'm blessed to have my parents. I'm eternally grateful to my parents. I can't thank them enough for their foresight and for their selflessness in saving my life as opposed to theirs.
So can you explain that a little bit? Like, what do you mean by that?
What I mean is that they could have easily kept me home because I'm their only child, and that's why they had a child, presumably, to be around. So I wasn't around from age 11 to 18. Well, actually, really 19, because my parents, at least my mother, joined me in the United States when I was 19. I came to the United States when I was 18 to go to college and then law school. But at the same time, you know, they could have definitely kept me around. I mean, imagine, I told my wife this, and my wife said, there's no way I would do that. And I don't blame her. I would think that 90% of the families you ask, if you had a child, would you send your child away at age 11? I would bet you they'd say, are you out of your mind?
Frank, did your parents ever tell you why? What was the reasoning behind it?
Well, absolutely, because they didn't want me to grow up a second-class citizen. They didn't want me to grow up with the hatred. Because on the streets, you know, we were distinguished, Martin. I mean, when people talk to me about discrimination, I say, well, I've lived it. I know it. I may not look like someone that would be discriminated against, but understand that it's not easy to be a second-class citizen. I remember going out of our house, for example, my mother telling me, make sure you speak to me in Turkish. Because if I spoke in Armenian, somebody would turn around and say, lady, does your child speak Turkish? Go home. Like it was somehow not our country or something. So we were considered almost foreigners in our own land. So that's what my parents saw. That's what my parents really appreciated, that, listen, we're already, you know, we are where we are, but at least this child does not have to be us. And my grandmother, of course, is a survivor of the genocide. I grew up with my grandmother and the horror of the genocide. So that's why I say, when I speak about this publicly, that, you know, my parents directly rise from the ashes of genocide. I, you know, kind of, because I grew up with my grandmother up to about age 11. And I have seen and heard the horror. My grandmother had one eye, for example, which she had lost on the death marches. She survived. In fact, when we get to it, I'll talk about the dedication of a brand new memorial in Rolling Hills Estates that finally I was able to be the catalyst to provide, and we can talk about human rights and my work in that domain in a few minutes, but that is how it started. I could not wear my baptismal cross, for example, outdoors, because that would not be something that would be palatable to a bunch of people, and the hatred would come out. When we played on the streets, when somebody didn't like the way the play was going, for example, unfortunately, the immediate word that would come to the minds of even children at times would be to assault our faith, which would be the translation would be infidel. So instead of cursing my mother or my sister, immediately my faith would be attacked. So that was kind of the norm. Mm-hmm. So in those circumstances, my parents certainly did not want me to grow up. And that's why I say I'm eternally grateful, because I couldn't know that. I couldn't make that decision at age 11, but they did. And I am who I am today because of, one, the education of my fathers in France. They were amazing teachers. Most of my empathy or human rights or my sense of justice, my values come from there.
I love how passionate you are about this, and like I said, we're going to definitely get into that work, the work that you did with the United Nations. We didn't even get into that. Like I said, you have such a long history. When I was reading your bio, and I knew about you before, and I have to say that, I know a lot of students at USC, and everyone absolutely loves your courses because of the passion and the breadth of knowledge you bring. Do your parents still live in Europe? Where are they at now?
No, they're here. They've joined me. Of course, unfortunately, my father's business, because it was very successful at one point, and it became more known, and he had to leave ultimately the country. So we lost a lot as a family, but we had one another, and we were able to make an amazing life in the United States. And that's why when I speak publicly again, I say that I am an unapologetic American exceptionalist. In my context, I mean no disrespect to anyone. By no means this is a perfect country. By no means this is an example of anything per se. But at the end of the day, in my context, in no country, I would be an immigrant who would come at age 18 with a brand new language, with a brand new culture, go to university, go to law school, become a lawyer, successfully practice law, run for office, earn votes, become a mayor, teach in one of the best universities in the world, be a gubernatorial appointee to the state medical board as a regulator, a vice president of the board. I mean, there is nowhere in the world that can happen.
Yeah, and you didn't mention you going to the Supreme Court, but we'll get into that too. Well, but let me ask you this: so when you were in France, what kind of activities were you? Were you into school? Were you into sports? What kind of activities were you into? And what was that like for you, high school and middle school?
It was a very happy life, Martin. After my first year of crying and trying to adapt to my new home, everything became crystal clear. I grew up very fast. A funny story recently. You've seen me dress, although today it doesn't look like it, but I enjoy dressing well. And a couple of ladies were commenting on my dress the other day. Oh my God, you're so color coordinated. You're always wearing this, etc. Who dresses you? I said, from age 11, me. So yes, so I got used to buying my own clothes, making my own budget. Indeed, the boarding school, of course, provided for all of my eating and shelter, study, etc. But I had to buy my own clothes. I had to buy my own whatever I wanted necessarily, and budget appropriately so I don't run out of money, because there was no one there to hand me cash. And don't forget, we're talking at that era where sending money, there was no system. There's no Zelle. There's no even wire transfer capability at that time from Turkey, because it was illegal to transfer money out. So bottom line is, it was really a very quick growing up, age 12, but it was very happy after that. I was a good student, and I was a good athlete. I played soccer, football in France, and basketball. Those were my two. I lettered in two sports. I played varsity in both and club in both. And 1 year we won the championship of Paris in basketball. Yes. And 1 year we won the championship of soccer in Paris. My school did.
So how did you end up? So how did you end up coming to the United States? That's a very interesting story as well.
Yeah, it is actually, because it really was not on my radar screen, to be honest with you. Once I went to Europe, I was comfortable in Europe. And the choices of university I was picking at the time was either in French-speaking Belgium, Switzerland, or the south of France. Those were the universities I was looking at the time. South of France, because I had cousins who lived in Lyon. That's not totally south, but certainly southern to Paris. And I thought that, I would go near my cousins in Lyon. And they have a very good university there as well. And in Liège, which is in Belgium, they also have a very good university. And of course, in Genève, where they also have a very good university. These were all francophone. They were all French-speaking universities. So that would have probably been easier for me, because I had matriculated in French between middle school and high school. And then my last year in high school, my godparents had moved to the United States, had migrated to the United States, they were able to come to the United States, invest properly, and be successful, obtain their green cards, and then ultimately, of course, become citizens, which I have done the same path. But they invited me to come to the United States to visit with them over the Easter vacation period that we had. So I did. Well, they had bought a house in Rancho Palos Verdes with a nice ocean view. Well, need I say more, that the blue skies of, although today is not that blue, but the blue skies of Southern California, that beautiful ocean, our roads, our cars, everything was so different to me than Europe, that I really said, well, maybe I should try the United States. It was a big risk, and a relatively challenging risk, because I changed 3 cultures in my lifetime and 3 languages to matriculate.
Did you speak English at the time when you came over?
No, not really. Not really.
So how did you feel?
I had taken English in my last 2 years in France, and I was strong in grammar, because you learn in another country, you learn English or any language grammar up, right? So I was strong in grammar, which actually helped, don't get me wrong. but conversational English, no way. So I had to learn a brand new language and go to school. So I remember when I went to college, I took all the STEM subjects, which I was very strong in to begin with, and that didn't require much English. So whether it was calculus, geometry, biology, or whatever, right? So I did all of those subject matters so that I could, give myself time to learn the English, which I did, of course. And I now say I speak a little bit of English. So.
What was your major? When did you decide on your major?
Actually, that's funny. You asked that question because I started as pre-med. And the reason why I started as pre-med is because those STEM those subjects were much better to me because European education on STEM and sciences is definitely, to this day, I think, stronger than our middle schools and high schools. So I was able to get enrolled in those courses, and I did relatively well. So I said, well, pre-med, I guess. It was not until my last year at Long Beach State, which is another good story, by the way. I'll come back to it, why I went to Long Beach State. At Long Beach State, I took a course as an elective course because I was done with most of my work. So I had already finished, I worked very hard and I had already taken all that I could take. So the last year, I took a course called Debate and Argumentation. My professor was a lawyer, just like me. Sometimes in life, very important people come to your life and change the course of your life. He was it. So he came to me and said, son, I don't know why you're doing pre-med, but you'd be a good lawyer one day. I had no idea what he saw in me. I said, really? He said, I'll write your letter of recommendation. But I said, Professor, it's too late to apply to law school. I can't change major. Yes, he said, you can. If you put your mind to it, I know you by now. I had spent an entire semester with him. He said, if you put your mind to it, you will do it. Look what you've done so far. From a no English, you're in a debate and argumentation class. And I said, okay, I'll see what I can do. So I thought about it, and to change major at the time, it was very hard because, I had done all the other stuff, right? So I went to the French department. I knew the chair. I said, Professor, would you allow me to test French 1, French 2, French 3, French 4? And coming to humanities as a major so that I could graduate with that. He said, well, it's never been done before. But he said, I tell you what, why don't we do 1 and 2 and see how you do? And then we'll see. So I waved into 16 units of coursework by taking all those exams and acing them, of course. And graduating on time to go to law school.
And then how did you get in Long Beach? What did you choose Long Beach?
Oh, so when I came to the United States, I knew no one, Martin. And I mean no one, other than my godparents, right? This is a brand new country. Just imagine me taking you to, I don't know, Senegal, right? I presume you don't know many people in Senegal. So I came to this country. I know nothing about universities, nothing. And my godparents are older. They're not university people. They have 2 young children at the time. They're not thinking of university. So the only university I knew was UCLA. UCLA.
That's hilarious.
So I went to UCLA and applied, and I got in. But the Shah of Iran was toppled. right before, right? So I went back to France. And then when I got back in August, because UCLA typically starts later in September, um, I came late August, early September to go to school. And my godparents said, "We received a letter for you from UCLA." Well, at that time, there's no fax, there's no nothing, right? So I said, okay. I opened the letter. It says, "Please come to register for classes. Bring your green card and/or your citizenship papers." I had neither. So at least at that time, we had applied. Um, and I said, "Can I bring a letter from the lawyer that we applied?" They said, "Nope." At that time, UC schools were catering to California citizens primarily. So since the Shah of Iran was toppled a couple years before, all of the Iranian students that had come from Iran had already their green cards, or some of them their citizenships for that matter. So they got in and there were no seats to be taken. I remember crying at the registrar's office because I know nowhere to go. My English is broken. Um, I guess the woman felt sorry for me and said, "Look, it's too late now to go to other schools who are on trimester base because they're already in. They're not going to take you. A four-year university is not going to." I knew nothing about the USC, by the way. For that matter, I knew nothing about any other university. So they said, well, I can send you to Cerritos College to see. I know the admission person there. I'm sure they'll do something for you. I said, sure. I'm desperate at that point. I don't know what a college is. I don't know what a university is. I don't know what a 2-year is. I don't know what a 4-year is. I have no idea. I know it sounds odd, but sometimes I reflect back and I say, how much information today our youth have and how much information I did not have, right? And how much information, with how much information some complain, and with no information I couldn't complain. I mean, there's no one to complain to. So I did it on my own. I went to Cerritos College. These people felt sorry for me, I guess, and took me in. And I had a couple of great mentor professors at Cerritos that really helped me. I aced my 2 years there. And when I was going to transfer, I had made a bunch of friends. And they said, we're going to Long Beach State because we want to surf. And I didn't know how to surf or anything like that. And I said, come on, guys, I want to go back to UCLA. So they said, no. We want to be near the ocean. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm 19, 20 years old at that time, right? And I don't want to lose my friends. So I went to Long Beach State. Now, fate would have it that my first day in class, my wife sat right in front of me.
And then did you meet her? Did you meet her in your first class?
Absolutely.
That is just an amazing story.
Yeah. So, fate in life, so things happen. When people say things happen for a reason, I say absolutely they do. My life is full of those reasons.
Well, Frank, but one of the things though that I got out of this, and I love the stories you tell, and that's one of the reasons I think everybody loves your classes as well, is because you have amazing stories. Is that one of the things I got out of it? It seems you made a lot of this happen too, because who goes to that? Who goes to somebody and says, "Hey, can I take three? Can I take three? Can I take four? Can I test out of 4 levels of French?" And so I think a lot of this goes to just your desire to, and your drive to overcome a lot of obstacles in front of you. because
You know what it is, Martin?
you had a lot of them, more
Yeah,
than most people would ever
Martin,
have.
and that I presume the definition of resilience, but I don't necessarily credit myself for that. I credit my circumstances. When you're desperate, you do a bunch of desperate things. And hopefully you do positive desperate things, not negative desperate things. Sometimes desperate people do desperate negative things, commit crimes or do drugs or whatever, right? Um, but but I did a bunch of things out of desperation a lot of times, but positively, right? And was able to shape my life from age 11. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And I had no choice. So that's why I say I'm not crediting myself, because I had no choice. There
But
was no other way.
it reminds me, and I know this is a very common book that I'm just going to quote, Angela Duckworth's book, Grit. I mean, I was constantly thinking of that because because of your grit and like you said, resilience, you actually created opportunities for yourself. And this is exactly why I have the podcast, because I think a lot of people, when they come up against something difficult, a lot of people don't have the drive and they give up. When someone like yourself said, you know what, I'm going to keep going, and I don't know if this is going to work or not. I can't speak the language. The culture is totally different than mine. I didn't even know that I was going to go to school here. What my family went through in Europe. There's people in Europe that absolutely don't like me. Where am I going to fit in the world, and that's why I really, really love this story. And then, so you went on to go to law school. How was the law school experience for you?
Tough. You know, to me, my life has been all about when the going gets tougher, get tough. So that's what it was. Law school is not walk in the park. Uh, you're reading several hundred pages a week. Uh, Typically, you are um, you are being trained to think differently, which is what I love. By the way, I've loved my. I still to this day love my law education. My doctorate in law is really, I would not trade it on anything else, first of all, um, because it made me think the way I think. Um, and it really gave me the tools to be who I want to be, and facilitated the rest of my life, really. So it was hard. But then in law school also, I had wonderful friends um, that understood my shortcoming, and helped me a lot. And by the way, I had four steady friends, strong friends. Three of the four are judges today.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, so they're very good friends of mine, and they took me under their wing in law school and helped me graduate. Um, because with the fifth year of immersion in English language, reading United States Supreme Court cases is not really the thing to do. But I did it, and it was fine. And everything, nothing came easy, but my as I said, when the going gets tough, just get tougher. That's it.
Hey Frank, how did you financially wage your way through that? Were you working at the time? Like, what were you doing to pay for finance all this?
So I was grateful to my parents. My parents were able to finance all of my education. I didn't have to pay for it. Um, really, so I was very lucky for that. One of the reasons my dad sacrificed and stayed back. Um, my dad came to the United States almost 4 years after I came. My mom came about 2 years after I came, and my dad came almost 4 years after I came calculating that he needed to earn enough for us to be able to buy a house in the United States and also pay for my education. So that was a smart move, and I'm grateful.
So what did your dad end up doing when he came here? Did he work here?
Yes, so we founded a very successful company. In fact, I worked through law school in that company. We were a sportswear garment distribution, most of it manufactured in Europe, and we imported and sold. And in fact, I stayed on with the business for 2, 3 years after law school, did not start my practice until a couple, 3 years later, because our company was doing very well. We used to sell to, at the time, Bullock's, Nordstrom, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, Saks Fifth Avenue, all the majors.
Wow. And then so what kind of launch you have to go. I would love to hear about how you got into, you started working in law, and then how that kind of emerged to working with the UN, and how did all that transpire? And then
So the law actually came. I was also grateful for that. My godfather, the same person that I mentioned earlier, had made great investments and had entered into few real estate partnerships in downtown LA, and they owned several buildings at that point. And they were foreign to the country, and they were astute business people, but they did not understand the laws, or they did not understand the business financial business culture necessarily. So I became their in-house counsel. That's where I really I was thrown literally into, again, a very complicated and multi-million at the time enterprise to really handle the legal affairs. We had about 200 or so tenants in those buildings. We actually built a brand new building. I entitled an entire brand new building downtown LA at my, I was 28, 29, in that range. So not many young lawyers get to do what I was able to do. So I was very quickly, in my early 30s already, I was, doing gazillion-dollar transactions, which not many young lawyers today have that opportunity. So I was grateful, and then I formed my own firm first, and then I collapsed that firm into a larger firm, and I became a partner in a larger firm. We were about 35 lawyers in that firm. I did a lot of the real estate work. I represented predominantly building owners, developers, and banks, and some governments also. At one time, I represented about 28, 30 counties of the state of California. And then I represented about 16, 17 cities in Southern California in various very large cases involving PG&E, for example, etc.
yeah, I know all about PG&E up here in North. We know all about PG&E.
Yep.
Yeah. So, you know what? So, how did you get involved with your work with the UN, and then we're going to also get into how you got into public policy stuff with Price.
My work with
the
UN actually started a little later after I came to USC, but prior to that, my human rights work began as a very young lawyer. When in my early 30s, one of our Armenian lobbying organizations in Washington, D.C., had a real estate issue actually that I needed to deal with. And they called me and they said, hey, could you come and work this issue for us, etc. So that's how it started. And then I took an interest in the lobbying activity of genocide recognition, and I became an advocate for that, and had a bunch of meetings both at the United States Congress, Senate. I knew Ted Kennedy and others that I met through this. At the time, Senator Biden too, by the way. I've known a lot of our members of Congress as well as members of Senate, and then during the Clinton administration, bunch of undersecretary of states that I interacted with. So I did a lot of that work to push human rights, genocide recognition, religious freedom. Those were all things that I worked on as a young lawyer, as a volunteer, not necessarily for pay. In fact, for no pay, because I really enjoyed that part of it, and the desire to help the next generation, because I rose from the ashes of genocide, was something very important to me. So that's what I worked on. And then, I knew always that teaching, writing was for me, because I come from a family of teachers. My aunt was a teacher. My great uncle was a professor in the Ottoman Empire. Graduated Roberts College, which was an American college. It was the Harvard of the Ottoman Empire. So I came from that kind of a upbringing, so to speak. But I did not think it would come that early, to be honest with you, in my career. I was first approached by a good friend of mine at the time. He was the dean of Pepperdine Law School. Richard approached me and said, "Hey, you should be teaching for us or for our policy school." And that year was the year that I became mayor for the first time. So that was 2007 and 8, I believe, because I was first elected in 2003 to the city council, and my rotation for mayor came at that time. I said, well, it's a little too early for me. And then I met with, at the time, Jim Wilburn, who was their dean of their policy school. And actually, he handed me a syllabus and said, teach this. And believe it or not, again, fate would have it. A week later, I get a call from USC. A week later. Now, Malibu is pretty far from me. USC is much closer. And that year, my son was accepted to USC. So again, things align, right? I mean, that's my life. That's how it has been.
Frank, so who called you from USC? Was this like a cold call?
So it was one of my friends who was a lawyer, used to teach, was an adjunct faculty member at Gould at the law school. And her partner taught both at Gould and at SPPD, which at the time was School of Policy, Planning and Development. Now, of course, the Price School. She called me and said, Juliette Mousseau, who was directing the MPA program at the time, needs someone like you, someone from the practice. I said, great. So I had my first interview with Juliette and never looked back.
So how many years have you been at Price now?
14 years.
And you became a professor of governance. How did that transpire?
So I first was an adjunct faculty member for the first year and a half. And then, the opportunity, my courses got more and more. At the time, the dean said, hey, can you teach a third course? Well, for an adjunct faculty member to teach a third course is hard. So you need to be at least 50% employed. And I said to Jack at the time, you can't afford me. and it's true. I mean, I was willing to make the sacrifice. I mean, look, I was a partner in a law firm, and we were relatively successful. And I can tell you that I knew I had to take a major pay cut to come, um, and that did not happen. So at the end of the day, I said, look, I don't think it's going to work out. So Jack said, well, figure something out. Well, it turned out that, again, I figured something out, and I founded my executive education program at Price 12 years ago. So the administrative function and my teaching combined gave me the opportunity to come to Price full time. Still taking a major pay cut, don't get me wrong, but at least manageable for us to be able to continue our lifestyle, as opposed to, I mean, it's not very elaborate, our lifestyle. We're very simple people in my family, but still at least live where I lived, did not have to sell a house or anything like that. So we managed, and then my program grew, and we did better and better, and here we are today, expanding into the military sector, for example, in my program, my executive program, and doing very well. And of course, 3 years ago, the dean asked me to take over our retiring associate dean's job in overseeing ROTC and the nautical science program. So now I run 3 major programs at Price. Combined, they represent about 5% of the entire Price School.
So what is your role, and what do you want to teach leaders and executives?
So in our executive program, we have a program called Local Leaders, which means mayors, council members, city managers. There we teach policy and skills. So policy meaning housing policy, transportation policy, health policy, etc., and skills like negotiation, leadership, etc. So those are the things we do. And then as far as what I teach governance, negotiation, and leadership. Those are my disciplines. And my title, Professor of the Practice, I was the first one to get that title at Price when titles changed about 10 years ago or so, because I was first going to be called a senior fellow because of my seniority in age and experience. But it made sense to change a bunch of titles. USC was looking to change titles at the time. So I got the first title, and Elizabeth Grady at the time was our vice dean. She's now our acting provost at USC. She said, what about governance, Frank? Since you're a mayor, etc., you have a law background. And I said, sure, that fits. So I became a professor of the practice of governance.
And in terms of leadership, and I'm going to ask you, this is a loaded question here. Do you think the leadership skills have evolved or changed? If you look at leaders in the past, just say 10 years ago, and you juxtapose that to now, and if they haven't, what do you think makes a good leader? And what do you think are some of the challenges that good leaders have?
Wow. You're talking about a semester work of coursework here, and you want me to answer it in 2 minutes? Is that what you want? For Christ's sake.
I set you up. I'm setting you up here.
Yeah, you totally. But no, first of all, leadership is developed. It is not taught. I can't teach you leadership. You can only be a leader once you raise your hand and say, I want to lead someone. And I don't care if that person is one person or a million people. A lot of people mix these bags, right? They think that by leading millions of people, you're a good leader. And when you lead 2 people, you're nothing. That's not true. It's a myth to say that leadership is about ranks, blood, or family, or titles. It's a total myth. And in fact, I gave a speech once in South Africa, and I said, I consider my mother a leader of one. And to me, that's huge, because I am who I am because of the values she taught me from 0 to 11. She led me during that time. So to me, that's leadership. She didn't have to lead countries or armies. So the skills or that a leader must have or need to have not changed. The style of leadership has or can change, right? So the humility aspect of a leader, the transformational aspect of a leader, or the authenticity of a leader, right? The transparency of a leader, the communicative qualities of a leader, all those have not changed. You still need to be humble to be a leader. You still need to be authentic to be a leader. In fact, unfortunately, this is the kind of stuff. I mean, you've seen it happen not long ago at LA City Hall with 3 council members who breached an amazing or violated amazing trust of the people by not being authentic, not by violating the first requirement of leadership of being authentic, and obviously they weren't, because they were hiding something. I always say when I teach these courses, I say, look, guys, public service is not for everyone. If you don't accept psychologically the notion of being public at all times and being authentic at all times, don't do it. One day it'll come out. You'll be caught one day, especially in today with all the technology, recordings, etc., etc. In fact, I say to them as an example, God knows how many emails or text messages I deleted before sending them to my own wife, because I thought if someone sees it in the out of context, I may be called out various things.
Wow. That's very powerful. Wow. Amazing.
So at the end of the day, authenticity, I am who I am. I have nothing to fear. And I say to people, look, practice if you're in public office, and I've been in public office since 2003, and I challenge anyone to show something since 2003 that I've practiced that basically would say that, no, Frank is just full of it, or that he's misrepresenting or doing. No problem. Go at it. Go find something. I say this comfortably because I sleep at night, because I'm authentic, because I know what I've done or I know what I've not done. Now, people can lie, that I can't stop that, but it will be a lie. It won't be a truth.
Frank, let me ask you, if somebody wanted to become a better leader, how would they do that? And I know we're going to talk about this, the way they can contact you, and obviously taking classes through a school like Price, through a program you run. But what kind of books and what would you recommend someone to become a better leader?
To me, the literature is plenty. I mean, there are amazing literature out there, both from practitioners and academics as well. I really value the practitioner side of leadership as well, and the theoretical, more theoretical as applied type of books just as well. So, there's gazillion of them out there. I'm not going to enumerate them here, but I have a couple of them in my syllabi that I I choose. But, to be honest, they're all out there. There's plenty of them out there that can be seen. People like Peter Drucker, Jack Welch, the Stephen Covey, and then you have Bob Denhart from our school, for example, Stephen Sample, Warren Bennis. I mean, I can go on and on with names that have written books about. And then there's, of course, books about various types of leadership in both genders as well, women leading. There's some great research on that topic as well. So, it's important to have a variety of things to look at, really, in order to get a good flavor of it. So there's plenty out there.
Well,
it's hard to mention all of them. But
well, Frank,
me,
I have to tell you one thing, Frank, and I know I only have like maybe 15, 21 minutes because I know you have a meeting you got to get to. So I've got to get this in. You have a very unique and amazing way of teaching leadership through horses.
Yes.
And I'm going to say this, and I really think this is one of the things that you really pushed in your lecture is that, and you can talk about this more, about the horse. They know that horses are very sensitive to the authenticity, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I would love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, so I chose that. In fact, you're right. I teach a course in our doctoral program and in our Masters of Leadership program using horses. I've been around horses all my life. As a young child, my father had a very good friend who actually had a great horse farm outside of Istanbul. And also, actually, where I live is an equestrian community. So I've lived here over 35 years. So I've been around horses a lot. In my backyard, there are horses, not mine, but our neighbors. But so I'm around horses all the time. So I observe and ride and all of that. So I always knew that, and I had to study, of course, a horse. And a horse, most people think that a horse is an animal created really for transportation purposes. That's not true. A horse is prey. A horse is on this earth to be prey. Therefore, the horse psychology is a prey psychology. In other words, a psychology that I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to run when I am attacked to be eaten. And the horse is an animal that knows how to communicate very simplistically. And if you communicate properly to a horse, the horse will build a level of trust with you to trust his life or her life and yours together. But if it doesn't, a horse will take over. So that's why we call a spooking of a horse, right? And when a horse is spooked, it takes off, right? That's the first instinct of a horse. That's the prey mentality. So I've studied horses for a long time, and I figured I can mix my literature and my knowledge in leadership into teaching it with horses, because I drive home two very important points. I guess three: communication, relationship, and trust. Three ingredients of leadership. So if you don't do these three things with a horse, the horse will take over, will no longer trust in your leadership capability. And I was able to create this course, and I was able to teach this course literally with horses. I bring over an entire morning, about 4 hours, people to our city hall and our horse corral right next to it, and bring a couple of horses or 3 horses with the help of a couple of cowboy friends of mine. We basically teach our students how to communicate with the horse. We don't let them ride it. USC will kill me if I did that. Uh, um, but but we show them how to communicate with horses. We show them how to lead the horse. Literally, take the horse and lead the horse. And through we design, obstacle courses, etc. We put food in front of the horse to try to divert the interest of the horse. But if you correctly lead that horse, the horse will do what you want to do, even if the food is there. So this is what we teach. Trust me, it's one of my best remembered courses anywhere.
Oh, I have to tell you, I learned so much when I took that course, and I think one of the things I really remember what you were saying, that the horse can sense if you're not confident,
Yes.
if you're not a confident leader, and I really got that out of. I think all of us were so impressed, and we really got a lot of that out of that course, and now I get to do my fun part, because I know you have a meeting soon, and this is. I'll try to make these really quick, because I love to get these in at the end. And Frank, I'm telling you right now, I probably have a list. I could go on and on with you all morning for 2 or 3 hours.
We can do another session. Don't worry.
Yes. Okay, so here we go.
We didn't even talk about UN, so maybe we do a session on UN.
Yes, we're going to do our second and third sessions here. Okay, here we go. We'll make these kind of rapid fire. What would the older Frank tell the younger Frank? What would the older Frank tell the younger Frank in terms of advice, if you could give it?
I think I would say keep the faith and continue to look for answers, remain authentic, love instead of hate, always be appreciative of what you've got. And love this country as I do.
If you could meet one person in your life, who would it be, and what would you say?
Nelson Mandela.
And what would you say?
I'm humbled. I'm amazed.
What is your favorite bike ride?
My favorite bike ride? I would say my regular one is from Palos Verdes to Santa Monica or towards Malibu, which I love. I love the OC ride as well. In other words, going from here to Newport Beach, Balboa Island, etc. So that's about 65, 70-mile ride. Love it.
And what's your favorite thing about being a dad?
Oh my God. That's a session in and of itself. First of all, I am extremely blessed and lucky to have had my best friend from Long Beach State to be the mom of our 2 children who are amazing. Our son if you've gone to a USC football game and you've enjoyed your experience, our son is responsible for that. He produces all of the live events for football at USC. And in fact, he's in Orlando today producing AVP volleyball. He will be in he was in Mexico City last week producing the Monday Night Football. So he's a producer of live sports events, and that skill he learned at USC.
Wow.
And he's eternally grateful for USC for giving him that skill. And of course, he became very good at it. He's an amazing producer. He writes the scripts of the live events and he actually implements them. Wow. Our daughter is a lawyer like me. Also USC graduate, went to Annenberg for undergrad, master's at Annenberg, and then went to Loyola Law School. Loves to write, just like me. Her second law review article just got published. The first one was at Loyola Law School. The second one was at Mississippi Law. So very blessed. Jody did a great job with our children. I can't take too much credit for them. I was definitely perhaps the value, and instilling in them, um, the difficulties that perhaps I faced. They saw their father, um, perhaps come through all of these things, and they're grateful for their life, and I'm very proud of that.
What's your favorite guilty pleasure food?
Guilty pleasure of food? Ice cream.
Okay, that's your weakness. Favorite music when you're writing?
Oh, I still listen to very much music that I grew up with in France.
Wow, that's amazing.
So people like Charles Aznavour, Michel Sardou, these are people that I listened to when I was 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, and I still listen to them.
And Frank, at the end of the day, when you're no longer on this earth, and this is like the best question I have, the best question I give to people, but it's also the most difficult too. Um, when you're no longer on this earth, what do you want to be remembered for? When they say Frank?
I want to remember. I want to be remembered for um, my humanistic values, my care for my fellow man, for the law, for this country, um, and I want my life to be the example of what can be. I'm very blessed. I say this with the greatest level of humility. I went through a lot of toughness and a lot of difficulties in my lifetime, and I've talked to you about some of them. Um, but I also recently was able to see a first of its kind memorial rise right at the entrance of City Hall in Rolling Hills Estates, dedicated to the memory of the victims of the Armenian genocide and also to the survival of those who survived and their resiliency, their will to survive. That'll stay there forever. And I'm grateful for that. That was done through private donations. I'll still raise funds for that, and I'll remain true for that. We're building a website to educate people on men's inhumanity to men. And as I always say, I can't bring my ancestors back, but I can certainly work to prevent from the next one from happening. And nothing dismays me more than seeing human suffering. And you've seen perhaps some of my blog articles that I publish in my faculty's perspectives pages, about Ukraine today, about Armenia today, the Russian aggression, the Azerbaijani Turkish aggression. I can't stand seeing human suffering, and I don't care who they are, or the Uyghurs in China. So it really doesn't matter, or Rwandans, or various African nations who suffer as a result of authoritarians who do what they do because they can, and because the rest of the world has learned to remain silent, because of the rest of the world remains in their hypocritical ways of their interests and not care for their fellow human beings. That's what I want to be remembered for.
Wow, it's amazing. And Frank, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, if they want to go take a class at USC or and get themselves involved with some of the stuff that you're doing program wise, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Well, I mean, I'm very easy to find, Martin. You go to the website of Sol Price School of Public Policy under faculty. You click on my name, my email address, my phone number. It's all there.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Frank. It's really been an honor to have you on here. You have an amazing history and you have so many amazing stories. I think I probably only got over like 1 or 2% of them. So we'll have you on again. And thank you so much for joining us. Join us for our next podcast and keep learning and have a wonderful holiday. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, Martin.
Take care, Frank.
All right. See you.
Bye-bye.